Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to part 3 of an adventure in coloring, coloring for relaxation. And I'm working on a mandala in my book, 40 Fan Favorites. And I'm really loving the way that it is turning out. For those of you who do know me, my name is Aldridge, or don't know me. I am Aldridge. And if you like what you see here on my channel, please do like and subscribe. And hit that like button or that ring that bell so that you don't miss any of my videos. You can catch up with me anytime on social media. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as CLAldridge Art. My Etsy shop is also CLAldridge Art. And on Amazon, I am simply CLAldridge. And welcome to my channel. And the third part, and hopefully the finish of this particular project. This is straight coloring with markers. I'm working with CLAarts, and then I had made up my own glitter, not glitter, but pearl watercolors using, in my case I used Jacquard Pearl-X pigments plus gum arabic. And then last night I made up a new set from the new powders that I'd gotten from the U.S. Art Supply Jewel-Essent powders, and this is them. And the reason why I want to sort of catch them right now is, as you can maybe see, most of these pans are fairly full. But as they dry, as the water evaporates, the actual powder and gum arabic part does shrink all the way down. So it will eventually look more like these. And these are really hard to the touch. Probably not as hard, or probably a little bit harder than these regular watercolors. And that has to do with the amount of gum arabic that I used. I think I might have used a little bit too much gum arabic when I made these up. I used a 1-to-1 ratio. 1 part of gum arabic and an equal part of the pigment. And that gave me a hard finish, but they re-wet beautifully. And the added benefit, I think, is that I can rub on this all day long and not take it off. It won't come off on my finger. So, to me, I think that is a benefit, and it's still flexible. So, at any rate, this is, obviously I am working on regular paper. This is not special paper of any kind. And I did base all of the gold parts with yellow marker, so it all shows through. I just think the other side of marker coloring is always so pretty. So it's like a little bonus that you get at the end of your coloring. There is a sheet of plastic down between my pages to protect them. And I chose to do a background in just a solid brown that I thought really accented the rest of the piece and let it show how pretty I think it is. Now, Obviously, I chose fall colors, and I think they're fall colors. Fall colors mixed with blue. And I used the white Uniball and just added a little reflection around the little pearls. And, just a real simple little line to make them look shiny. And then, of course, I did all the yellow parts I did with the gold. So, how is everybody today? This is the chamois color, which is the Y337. And I just, once again, this particular piece is just straight coloring. And I'm using the chisel tip. And it's nice to see folks commenting on the second part of this. I started it on last Sunday's live stream and then continued it midweek with a part 2. Just concentrating around the tight bits. You can also instead use your, get rid of that, it's in my way. Use the much easier to do detail areas of the small end of this marker. So I did learn a couple of things in working with the Jewelescent powders as opposed to my Jacquard Pearl X powders. They are both the same thing. They are simply finely ground mica mixed with pigment so that they look like pearl. And but I did notice after I'd done about the 4th or 5th one, I started to get a fairly sharp pain in my stomach. And I didn't, it could have easily been that I was hungry. It could have been a lot of different things. But just to err on the safe side, because the powder is so fine and it is so easily airborne, I did put on a painter's mask to do the rest of them. And I think that's probably a good idea. So I am going to recommend that. Just one of the sort of cheapo kind that you can get at Walmart. That is just really to keep you from breathing in the dust. So I think that whenever I make them up in the future, I will also be using one of those. Now, one of the interesting things is that a little bit of the powder and the gum arabic goes a long way. That's only 1/4 of a teaspoon of each of those together, along with a 1/4 teaspoon of water, will make up enough of the paint to liquid fill an entire half pan. And then once that dries and it shrinks down, then you can add a little bit more, and you layer it. What you're doing is, as you're doing these things, you're layering them up. Because when you buy watercolors brand new, how they're full, they do that by filling the pan, letting it shrink, and then adding another layer. So when I get a chance, I'll make up some sets of those and maybe use them as channel giveaways. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? Would you like a set of handmade pearl watercolors? Made by yours truly? I have to get some more gum arabic. The one thing about it is that I only had one jar of that, and but I'll get some more. So I have discovered that the reason why watercolors are so expensive is that they are A, labor intensive to make, and B, pigments, you know, quality pigments are pricey these days. Okay. But the jewel-lescent powders are not that expensive, so not in the long run. Okay. All right, so there's that. I mean, not compared to what you have to pay for watercolors. This is so, I always worry that I'm going to go out of the line thing. I put this back up. I like to keep my pages straight down, so I am constantly clipping and unclipping stuff. Oops. Sorry about that. Took a little break there for just 1 second. Let me get this. So this has been a really fun project for me to work on. Sorry, I know I'm supposed to talk. That's funny. I'm not doing very... I'm not following through, am I? Maybe I'll just strip the sound. Sorry about that. Doing an awful lot of apologizing. I watched earlier today, I watched Anne A Colorful Life. She was unboxing a bunch of, or not unboxing, but doing a haul video of her latest batch of grayscale coloring books. And she was not happy. She was not happy with the quality of the books. And as I was watching, now there was one that was absolutely gorgeous, but the grayscale in it was very, very light, and she prefers to have a much darker grayscale. So there was really nothing wrong with that book other than personal preference. But the other two were compilation books. And when you say compilation, what that means is that they were compiled by somebody. And basically, they were made up of images that are either out of copyright or have been freely licensed at places like Shutterstock and other, Pixabay and other places like that. And there have been, of course, in 2015, when the coloring books became very popular, adult coloring books, there were a large number of what we artists refer to as unicorn salesmen, who were teaching classes to people about how to, create a coloring book made up of these free graphics and, make $1 million. And of course, we, the artists, cringed that, that people would actually do this. But a lot of people did. And among them is this person who put out these particular books that Anne bought. And, there's nothing illegal about it. It's just that you're sort of, it's a gamble as to how good they are in doing things like, blowing up an image that might have been originally this big to a full-size page. And in most cases, you can't change the resolution. And so consequently, the quality of some of the images was very fuzzy in these books. And that really showed. But the bottom line is that I think she bought 4 books, was unhappy, or 5 books, was unhappy with almost all of them except one, and ultimately returned them all to Amazon, and Amazon was just wonderful about it. So, kudos to them. Let's see, what am I doing? I'm going with a lighter green on the leaves. I'm just doing the big things right now. So I'm going with this lighter green on the leaves. This is, for those curious, this is G503. Yeah, G503. And that chamois color, which I was using, is Y337, which is the brown color. And I love that brown color. So that is, that is what those are about. Now, you can usually spot one of those books because in the case of a reputable American person, let's say reputable American person, there are reputable people all over the world, but a lot of them, when they made up these books, they didn't realize that they should probably write in some place that's visible, easily visible, that they are compilations, that they're not, they're not artist representations. They're old art where artists either are long dead or, there's no royalty or anything like that going to the artist. And that it's not original to the person who's releasing the book. But a lot of them don't, a lot of them do. And so if you see a book where it says compiled by or curated by or, the art of, by, the art of, like one of the people who does it does a great job. I mean, she really spends a lot of time making sure that the images are beautiful. And her books are actually worth buying. But what she's done is like the old pen and ink illustrations from some of the antique books, or like Alice in Wonderland, or various other fairy tales. Back in the day when, because Grimm's fairy tales have been around for a very long time, and a lot of artists have illustrated them over the years. So what she does is she's gone after those old illustrations and, converted them to coloring books. I don't even remember her name now. But I remember that at first I was sort of horrified that she was doing it. As an artist, we feel that way. And then secondly, I was kind of happy that she was preserving this particular art because it's very good, and doing such a good job at it. Heidi something. Anyway, so it is, if you see a book that's compiled by or curated by or featuring the art of, just know that it is a coin toss. And also, if you can't find a good flip through of it on YouTube, stay away from it. Because there is hardly a book that has been released in the last 4 years that you cannot find a flip through of on YouTube. Because everybody loves to show a book that they've discovered that's really, truly beautiful. Anyway, it is Friday here in the studio, and it has been hot here in Virginia. We had an unprecedented, like 90 something degrees yesterday. So it's playing the late summer game. Call it late summer game, where it's way warmer than it ought to be. All of us who are craving fall are going, no, no, not 90 degrees. We all want to drag out our sweats again. Of course, it's always that way, isn't it? When it's a long winter, we crave summer, and when it's a long summer, we crave fall. I like the way that these two greens work together. And just using two greens, one on a stem and one on the leaves, gives just a nice little color variation. It's like a blend. It fools the eye. One thing about it, though, all of these hot and, the hot weather like it is, I got caught with because the day before had been just gorgeous. Like, 72 degrees and nice breeze that was blowing. So I had all the windows open. They cut the grass. And, so I breathed the grass fumes all night. And then I didn't catch closing all the windows before before it warmed up so much. And the back of my house tends to be cool, and that's where my studio is. And the front of my house gets really warm. And so I was working in the studio all morning, and I got up and went out to the living room, and it was hot. It was hot in the house and humid. So so it messed with my breathing again. So I apologize if I sound a little out of breath today. Suffice it to say, the air conditioner is on, and the air in the house is dried out. Okay. So I'm doing the same thing that I did with the tips of these. I'm going at this with this lighter blue first, and then I'm going to add the darker blue on top of it. Now originally I had done these I'll show you how I originally did them, and you can decide on the other side, and you can tell me which you like better. But once I added the gold, I realized that it made it too busy, because my goal here is not to call attention to these two strips. It's to keep the focus here in the center. So I duded out these two strips and made them, like really pretty, but they were really pretty standalone, but as part of the overall composition, they took away from they called too much attention to themselves. That's what it was. So I made them solid blue. I was watching Rebecca over at the Art Spirits earlier today also, and she has, she's been making her own watercolors as well, and so I love to watch because she buys the various tins that are available, empty tins. And that gives me a chance to see what's available, and she's discovered some interesting alternatives for home palettes because those tins are so expensive. And especially if you buy them preloaded with the, little half pans and stuff like that. And so she's a good person to learn from to help keep those costs down. Okay, now the other side here, I did this. I'm going to do these two butterflies the same. And so I started out doing this one. He's just dark blue. And then I did this one a little tri-toned, two colors of blue and the darkest orange. I almost wish that I'd used the lighter orange on that. I can't go back, but I could either change it to gold or something like that, but I think I'm just going to leave it because I almost love the contrast of those two. So I am going to, however, use my number 1 black micron graphic pen. Now, this is a drawing pen. So you could do this with markers, you could do it with ballpoint pen, you could do it with paint, you could do it with a lot of different things. You could do it with pencil. But I'm just going to and you don't have to make them black. You can make it any color you want. But my butterflies always have black bodies. But I don't want to commit you to that, which is why I don't draw them in that way. Let's see here. Make sure I can get it under the camera. So there's 3 distinct little body parts. There's this thorax, and then there's this long part, and his head. Okay. And I leave the little white area down the back so that it looks more like a reflection of light. Like he's shiny. Okay, now, let's see. I'm trying to think of what I did. Oh, I guess I did do the lightest blue here. Yeah, 203 is the lightest blue. So, what have you got planned for the weekend? Sorry, I didn't mean to shout. Anything fun? Are you watching streams? Are you going someplace? Are your kids having a good are they enjoying their school and all those kinds of good things? Not that it's any of my business, so please don't feel obligated to answer that last one. Or any of them. Trying hard to keep this pen light. As in very light pressure. Because if you let it, this paper will absorb a lot of ink. Okay. I'm glad that this one was one of the fan favorites. I enjoyed drawing this particular picture. Excuse me. It was as much zen for me to draw as it hopefully is for people to color. And this is the first time I'm coloring it, although it's been colored quite a bit, because trying to this one came out of when I did the index on this, I put what book it came out of. So this one came out of Flowers and Whimsy, which was my 4th book, I believe, and we're at number 11 now, so actually number 12 is the one I'm drawing right now. Okay, so there's that. And then I think that on this one, I did this in the dark blue. Yep, on both sides. And then I did this one in the dark blue. Okay. Ooh. I like that. And now 204 for this. So I did these. I ran into my across the street neighbors at the grocery store last night. And so we stood and visited for a few minutes and caught up on what's going on with each other. So that was nice, since all we've managed to do for the last probably 6 months at least is wave hi and bye to each other from, from across the street as we're busily heading out somewhere else. Okay, so this is the darkest of the oranges. And so I'm going to use this for the outside of the little wings. Make that puppy pop up off the page. I really do lead a very simple life, you know. I art and I read. Oh, speaking of reading, I mentioned that I had purchased this book on the recommendation of somebody I don't even know, really. And I've got to tell you that it is quite interesting so far. Because I had read a lot of reviews and things like that on it, while I don't know the particular story, I did thumb through the book, as is my way, and sort of examined all the different appendixes and the some of the various parts of it. So I have a suspicion that I know what's going on, but it's interesting watching it get there. The man who wrote it is obviously gifted with, a both a high degree of intelligence and a scientific researcher's way, both of which appeal to me. But the story itself is actually fascinating, and it's told in basically 3 parts. And they're all being told simultaneously. So you have to be able to both read the main portion, but also the real story is really being told in the footnotes, which aren't really footnotes. They're more the thoughts of all of the different perspectives of this particular thing that they're examining, and it's just that's about all I can say about it. It's about a house that just doesn't behave. The house just does not behave. How about that? So far, the house does not behave. But it's not really about the house. It's about the people who live in the house. And the things that live in there with them. Alright, so we'll go from there. Oops. Look, I forgot the little dots. I could hear you shouting at me. You forgot the little dots, Christine. There we go. Alright, so that's the main body done. Now, once again, I'll show you why I did not leave this like this. Although I could have. Okay, so this is the Y314. And it is the yellow. And so I'm going to start out just, or I should say the gold. And just do these little doohickeys. All the little enclosed spaces first. And but so far it's definitely got me interested, which is I mean, there's a minotaur in it, which leads you to believe that there's a labyrinth in it, and I know enough mythology to know that the labyrinth is always about, you know, the unanswered questions in our lives. So but, you know, and then also, how do you explain a house that is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside? That's weird. Rooms that seem to come and go, and hallways that appear out of nowhere overnight. So there's a whole lot of psychological gaming going on in it as well. And it's told from the point of view of an apprentice tattoo artist. And he's talking about a chest of papers that he found in an old man's house upon the old man's death. And supposedly the old man was writing this. These are all his notes on a fictitious documentary that is supposedly very famous. So, although of course the documentary itself doesn't actually exist, because it's a work of fiction. But I do know that whatever it is, something tragic has happened in these people's lives. When it comes down to, basically right down to it, most novels, most good ones at least, are about unresolved issues. My favorite novel, of course, is always going to be Atlas Shrugged. Only because I just, it really is, especially now. Oh, I know. I know we're not supposed to talk about it, but oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, the news. And the fact that the guy doesn't think he did anything wrong, that just floors me. Oh. But that's enough about that. It's like, how can you not get how criminal that is? Some people just think the rules don't apply to them, I guess. The thing that makes a democracy is that we all agree to live by the rule of law. So, and the thing that keeps a democracy from sliding off into anarchy is that we do agree to live by the law. Except this guy. He doesn't think. He thinks that because he's the president, the law doesn't apply to him. We all know what happened to the last president who said something like that. I believe his name was Richard Nixon. Sorry, hopefully I'm not going to have to... Hopefully I'm not going to have to delete that. You'll all know what I'm talking about. Heck, you know he screwed up when even his own party is turned against him. On the other hand, hopefully we all think about the consequences of that. Mr., President Pence. Excuse me, what? Oh, I'm sorry. Now I'm not going to be able to post this video at all, huh? Please, people that love those two, do not hate me, alright? I didn't say anything bad about either one of them personally, just that I don't care for their politics. But that's what the vote is for. Speaking of which, if you guys are all having the as many campaign flyers and door hangers and those beautiful pieces of stiff paper, I would encourage you to remember that those make great pages for your scrap journals, and that you can decoupage on them, and it's you know, it's like cardstock. It's like free cardstock. All you have to do is decorate over it. And I don't know about in your neighborhood, but man, I am just getting inundated by it here. Of course, Virginia is like that. Virginia is a very political state, partly because, you know, we're one of the original 13, so. And Virginia isn't even a state, it's a commonwealth. Virginia and Massachusetts have that in common. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I think Massachusetts is still a commonwealth. Okay. I think there's only 3 of us. Massachusetts, Virginia, and Kentucky, I believe. I could be wrong. Okay. Okay, I paused the video and added a little water to my gold paint here. So I'm just gonna mix that up a little bit. And yeah, sorry about the politics, folks. Normally I do not indulge, but man, there are some days where you just cannot help yourself. Okay. Let's try that consistency and see how we do. See, it wets so nicely again. And if it's a little too thin, still I can always go back over it. With a second coat. Although this part does take a decent amount of concentration. Since I'm trying to do those little tight spaces. And once again, I'm using this very fine detailed brush. And I love the shape of this brush. These triangle shaped, you know, with the triangle shaped handle, or triangle shaped finger grip, I should say. Give you an awful lot of control And that's what I like. I like that, you know, I like that control that you get. I'm sort of holding it down on both sides so that I can, because I'm getting a little bit of glare off the light, so it helps me to be able to see. Plus, it helps to, if it's flat, so that you're not, so that your brush is hitting consistently every time. I love the way this gold looks over the yellow too. Just enough that gold shows through, and yet it changes it from the sort of harsh yellow that it is into a much prettier, you know, base for the gold to reflect. Yeah, overall, I am very, very happy with this, with the idea that I was able to put my old Pearl X powders. I used to have those for when I did polymer clay pieces, and I wanted to add some gold leafing and stuff like that, because you can apply Pearl X powder directly to the clay, and it's gorgeous. But it's got a lot of versatile uses, and I had no idea you could make paint out of it until I saw, I think it was Lindsay over at the Frugal Crafter do it, and I thought, well, hot dog, I don't have to buy metallic watercolors because I have everything I need. So I just bought the gum Arabic, or I should say, I put the gum Arabic on my wish list, and somebody was kind enough to send it to me. So all day, I woke up this morning thinking it was Saturday. I don't know why. I, you know, woke up and flipped on the computer and fully expected to dash over and catch Sammy's live stream. Of course, then it occurred to me that it was Friday and not Saturday. Do you ever do that? Do you, I mean, it's like you're not forgetting what day it is so much as you're thinking it's a different day than it is. I really, really like that that this does not brush off. I was worried that I was going to have to spray it. You know, like when you use pastels, and in order to, you know, keep it from rubbing off, you have to spray it with a workable fixative, or a vinyl fixative, whatever fixative you're using. But you don't have to do that with these because of the gum arabic in it. It just stays on the page. Hopefully this is not too tedious to watch, but I just wanted to show you the process, and that it's easily doable with a, you know, with a detail brush. You can, in fact, get into those little tiny spaces. They're not too difficult. And this would also work in your, you know, in your books that have little tiny spaces. You could use watercolors and a little tiny brush, or even acrylics and a little tiny brush, if you didn't have fine tip markers or something like that. Because there are some books that, you know, even with fine tips the size of these, they're still too big. So, but you could do them easily with one of these. I just may work on something like that. Because I certainly have a couple of books with barely tiny spaces. And I was actually inspired to these big gold spaces by watching Coloring F, Frances, because she uses a fair amount of gold in some of her colorings, and it's just so pretty. As does Mary Atelier. Atelier? Yeah. Might be Artlier, Atelier. M-E-R-I. And A-T-L-I-E-R, I believe. She's usually on very, very early in the morning, East Coast time, so it would be literally the middle of the night, West Coast time. I think she comes on at like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning here. But she's a ton of fun to watch. Very talented artist in her own right, and just sort of wild art woman otherwise. And you just never know what's going to happen over there. I'm sorry. She and Aunt Beck. And Aunt, A-U-N-T, and then B-E-C. Although Aunt Beck, I think, does more, I want to say she does more fabric crafty type things. But that's what I love about YouTube, man. There is just something for everybody. And even if it's not your particular art medium, there are some people that are just fun to watch. Just because they just have such joy in their art, you know? Joy in the process. Not real happy with the way this particular section got coated. I was starting to run out of water, or the paint was starting to get pretty thick, actually. And it does help to go and rinse your brush out every now and again, because it does have a tendency to build up in the brush. And so if you notice that you're having a tougher time maintaining a really tiny line, or get into a really tight corner, then just go wash your brush and put just a tiny bit on your tip, and you'll be able to get into that corner again. Because gum arabic, when it dries in the air, it is very solid. And so it makes the tips of your bristles less flexible as it dries on your brush. So like right about now, we're going to do it. And just always you're not squeezing it or rubbing it or spinning it or anything like that. You're just wiping the brush. And your brushes will last you a good long time. I'm going to turn it this way because I think that this is it's a little more wet over there. I think I need to add a little more water to that paint again. Okay. And I found that is just the best way to do it. I just put a little water on my fingertip and then sort of scrape it off into the pan, and it's just about enough. And that's better. Okay. That's a nicer consistency. Uh-oh. And yes, folks, that is my stomach growling. And no, I have not eaten. Had 2 cups of coffee and no food so far today. So that may be my next stop. Cannot believe I'm almost done with this. This has been such fun to color. I have really, truly enjoyed doing this one. No, I mean, I enjoy doing them all, but maybe it's just because I like the way that this one's turned out. It could just be that this is the first time I'm using this gold, and I'm just thrilled with it. I made these up months ago, and I still hadn't used them really, because I hadn't had any reason to. Nothing that, you know, a gold glitter pen wasn't a better choice for. And so this is just thrilling, because I was actually able to do fine detail work with it, which I didn't know if I was going to be able to, and I didn't know if it would stick or be, you know, be so that you have to spray it or whatever. And so the idea that you don't have to spray it, that it works, it lays down a smooth gold finish over a large area, because, you know, this is doing the background of these is much more of a large area than just the fine lines that I used over here. So it's just thrilling when a plan, you know, that you've had comes together. So there are still 2 finishing touches that I need to do. And you tell me, which do you like better? Do you like the, oops, solid blue buds, or the dark blue buds, or the two-tone buds? And to give it a fair shot, I will turn it this way as well, so you can see it both ways. I think that this is just too busy. I like this one better, personally. But what are your thoughts on it? And do let me know that in the comments below. Are you a solid or are you a two-tone? I am going to do the interior of... I've been wondering what I was going to do with this center here. And I'm going to use this dark green. And then I'm going to put a little sorry about that. I'm going to put a little uniball line in it. Had to pause to cough there for a second. Okay. So just like that. And there we go. I'd say pretty good job. I'm actually really pleased with this one. So I hope that you enjoyed watching it too, and that that you will soon be coloring your own. Thank you very much for choosing to spend some time with me today, and thank you very much for watching, and until we meet again, please color something pretty. See ya, everybody. See you on Sunday.